All right, so guys, if you're having some trouble with this, I'm not the expert on the gradient tool, obviously. So if you're having some trouble with it, like I was, the functionality gets skewed, and I'm not exactly sure what the line is that defines when it gets skewed. But it looks like if you go into your settings, if this gets docked on the side, I'm not sure.
How to remove it?
Yeah, it seems like.
Go up. Click on it and go up.
Well, well, no. So not that. It's what I'm getting at is you can't right-click it at that point. So once you start docking them, for some reason, changing the color is it was acting up for me. Now for some reason it's working. But anyway, I suggest if you get hung up on that, like I was, just drop it. Get rid of it and start a new one. So anyway, what I'm going to do now is start modifying the colors to suit my needs, right? So if you want it to sort of be, you could go with sort of like an infrared thing where the hot ones are going to be white and the black ones are going to be, or the cool colors are going to be black, something like that. So you could go black and then like a gray color. And then something white. So this is going to give you sort of an infrared look. So that's just a thought. You don't have to do that. You can make it anything you want. You could actually make it red if you want. So I'm not trying to prescribe anything to you here. I'm just trying to say that as you're developing your presentations are going to take on a certain aesthetic. That aesthetic can be modified here in your analysis very easily if you do it here before you push it out to a different software, which again we're going to also do in this course too a little bit. So that's your legend parameter. So the other thing that you can do, and I'm not sure really how much information this is going to change for us here, but we can change the low bound and high bound. So I dropped in another panel for us, and we're going to use that to modify what our highest level and our lowest levels are going to be. So I can change my low boundary to a certain minimum, and I say minimum just, this graph is basically just going to stretch from 12 Celsius to, say, 26 Celsius, right? So 26 is right here. We can plug that in. Okay, so now you get a more refined look at what those values are going to be. So anything that's black is less than 12, and anything that's very, very red is more than 26, right? So let's say, and I only chose these values because it was in the tutorial that I was looking at, but if it was Fahrenheit, right, you'd basically want to size it to something that is, your palatable amount. What's going to be comfortable? Okay, so lastly, and this is just the last little bit in the tutorial, at least that I picked up, is colorizing the graph itself. So colorizing the graph itself is also another thing that's pretty simple. So if you go to display, and what I mean by the graph itself, I mean the lines. So under display and this one under preview, under custom preview, I need to explain a little bit about what this node is because it looks a little different than what you're used to. Now, the different part of this node is that there's nothing on the right side of it. So it has this jagged edge to tell you that it serves no function other than reading information, right? And in this particular case, it reads the information and it shows you what information it's reading. So we can plug in a geometry and then a shader, in this case a color swatch, and it will change the line work of the graph around it. So just, this is non-intuitive, so I'm just going to do it for you so you know what you have to do. You need to have the graph mesh and the graph curves. Whoops. Well, you could just do the graph curves too. But the graph mesh and the graph curves, and then the color swatch is actually back in params. So you go to params and input and color swatch. Now I plug that in, and I've got white line work for my graph.
Color switch.
Color swatch is under params, input. So if you want to change the color swatch, you double click it, and you can change it to whatever you want. You could have it be all red, be white, black. Change the hue if you want it to be a different color. For me, I'm just going to leave it white. Okay, so what questions do you have? Yes?
How did you, what's the reason you selected 12 and 26 for the high?
All right, that's a good question. So if you look at like this section of the graph, right? Well, actually, let me disconnect these for a second so you can see what I'm talking about. See how widespread? It's actually really hard to see up here, but on yours you'll see it. But see how washed out the graph gets by analyzing all of the information, right? Because the information's so widespread, when really what I want to analyze is I want this graph to identify the areas of comfort throughout the year. And I don't know, 12 and 26 seems like it's probably not. It could be reasonably cold, reasonably hot. But 12 and 26 now, if I put it on, that information becomes more clear, right?
Did it like zoom in?
It didn't zoom in. That's another good follow-up question. So what it did was it changed the gradient. It delimited the gradient to show everything that's 12 or below as all black and everything that's 26 or above as all red. So it basically changed the density of that to be more dense in the middle region, you know, so the gray areas are more dense.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it is.
Do you understand why you would do that? Okay. So just as a heads up, guys, I gotta give props to the guy that I'm learning this from. So if you go to youtube.com, I want you to check this guy out. His name is Chris Mackey. This guy.
Chris Mackey?
Yeah. So I'm letting you guys in on basically how I pick this stuff up, and it's so incredibly easy. These people are available for your use as well. Chris Mackey, basically, the guy who made the software has really important, really valuable information for learning it too, but he's really hard to understand. So my suggestion is working with Chris Mackey's videos has been easier for me. And you know, this is what I just did right now is like straight from his videos. Okay, so it's pretty easy to digest. Okay, I just learned this like the other day, and I have a pretty good working knowledge of it. And you can too. Okay, so we're gonna do a couple more things with this today. I'll give you guys a short break here in just a moment, but we're going to do a couple more things with this today, and then next class we're going to look at the actual export process. Okay, so we're doing some simple graphs and stuff, and then we're going to look at how do we take those graphs and actually produce a product with it. Okay, what questions do you have? All right.